If you would achieve what others call impossible, you must first learn to think in a way others never dare. You must divorce yourself from the herd. You must rise above the common thinking of the masses, because what most call realistic, I call resigned. What most call safe, I call spiritually bankrupt. Greatness does not come from caution. It comes from clarity of purpose, backed by a will so fierce that the universe itself must bend to it. The man who achieves the impossible is not reckless, he is relentless. He is not lucky, he is locked in. He does not pray for ease. He demands alignment between his thoughts, beliefs, and behavior. And in doing so, he creates the results most men never even dare to imagine. I will tell you now plainly, all achievement begins with thought. And not just any thought, but organized, directed, emotionally charged, relentlessly repeated thought. This is where men fail. They let their thoughts wander. They believe what others believe. They think like spectators in a stadium instead of architects of their own destiny. If you do not control your thinking, you do not control your life. To think, and I mean to think with power, you must become ruthless with what you allow into your mind. You must treat your mind as sacred soil, because every thought is a seed. And if you are planting doubt, planting fear, planting weakness, do not be surprised when your results are bitter and small. But if you choose to plant belief, plant vision, plant clarity of desire, and the absolute refusal to quit, then impossibility itself begins to dissolve in front of you. You see, the only limit that truly binds a man is the limit of his own belief. I have seen men rise from nothing, less than nothing, simply because they believed it was possible. And I have seen men with education, wealth, connections, and brilliance fail simply because they believed the lie that their dream was too big. Let the world call it impossible, that is their right. But it is not your reality. Because the moment you take hold of an idea with total belief, the moment you marry it with definiteness of purpose, nourish it with faith, and protect it with discipline, you begin to awaken forces within and around you that the average man will never understand. Most men look at the world through the lens of limitation. They say, this hasn't been done before, and they stop there. But the man who thinks to achieve the impossible says, then I will be the first. And in that moment, everything shifts. He is no longer playing by the rules of the world. He is creating new rules drawn from his own vision. You see, the power to think is not simply the power to analyze, it is the power to build. The mind is the only tool that can take what is invisible and turn it into steel, into currency, into empires. But that power must be directed, it must be governed. It must be trained like a wild stallion until it obeys the hand of purpose. Ask yourself, are your thoughts building your destiny, or are they stealing it? Because most men live their lives thinking like victims. They repeat the opinions of others. They dwell on fear. They spend more time worrying about what might go wrong than they do deciding what they will make right. That is not thinking, that is surrender. Real thinking is rare. Real thinking is rigorous. Real thinking hurts because it demands that you dissect your excuses, burn your crutches, challenge your assumptions, and then say, what do I really want and how do I make it non-negotiable? That is the first step, clarity. You must know exactly what you want. The man who achieves the impossible does not chase a vague dream. He knows the number, the address, the title, the outcome. He has it etched into his mind with such clarity that it becomes more real to him than the obstacles in his path. This is called definiteness of purpose, and it is the cornerstone of every great success ever created. Without it, your energy is scattered, your focus is weak, your actions are inconsistent. But with it, you are a weapon, a force of nature, a soul on fire who cannot be extinguished by failure, fatigue, or fear. The second law of impossible achievement is applied faith. Not faith as a passive belief, but faith as an active force. Faith that drives behavior. Faith that says, I do not see the evidence yet, but I will act as if it is already mine. You must develop the skill of behaving in advance of the outcome. Think like the man who already owns the empire. Speak like the man who already leads the room. Move like the man who knows that success is not a matter of if, but when. This is not delusion. This is alignment. The universe does not respond to beggars, it responds to builders. Men who act in congruence with their belief. And make no mistake, the world will test you. You will be mocked, doubted, misunderstood. But these are not signs that you're wrong. They are signposts that you are ahead. The impossible is only impossible until it isn't. Everything around you, every invention, every tower, every masterpiece once lived only in the mind of someone bold enough to believe it could be done. So do not ask whether it's realistic. Ask whether you are disciplined enough to make it real. This brings us to the third principle, the power of autosuggestion. You must begin to speak to yourself with the voice of certainty. Not once, not occasionally, but repeatedly, until it becomes your identity. What you repeat, you begin to believe. And what you believe, you begin to create. Affirm it daily, speak it with emotion, burn it into your subconscious mind like a brand. Because your subconscious does not argue, it accepts. It believes what you tell it, especially when told with repetition and emotion. So if you constantly speak limitation, it will deliver you a limited life. But if you declare power, potential, precision, it will begin to shape your reality accordingly. Say it now. I think with clarity. I act with purpose. I achieve the impossible because I refuse to obey limitations. Say it again, louder, until you believe it. Because belief is a habit, and all habits are trained. You must become intoxicated with your vision, obsessed with it, willing to build it in silence, in solitude, in sacrifice, while others sleep, doubt, or quit. You must become immune to the noise of the world, because the world will always say, stay safe, be realistic, don't aim too high. But hear me, realism is the language of the defeated. No man ever reshaped the world by being realistic. He reshaped it by seeing something others could not and refusing to unsee it. That is thinking at its highest level. That is the mind of a man who achieves the impossible. But let me be clear, this will not come easy. You will be tempted to quit. You will be pulled by comfort. You will be told you are foolish. But none of that matters if your purpose is clear, your faith is active, and your repetition is relentless. Then and only then do you become dangerous. Because now your results are no longer determined by opinion, emotion, or fear. They are determined by law, the laws of cause and effect, the laws of mind and matter. And when you master those laws, you realize the impossible was never real. It was only unfamiliar. And the moment you trained your mind to think at the right frequency, it became yours. There is no power greater than a made-up mind. Once a man has made the decision to achieve the impossible, truly made it, not just hoped for it or talked about it, nothing on this earth can stop him, because his thinking becomes sovereign. His spirit becomes unshakable, and his results become a natural consequence of his commitment. This is why I say again, if you would learn to think and achieve the impossible, you must decide with finality. No. Plan B. No exit route. No fallback identity waiting to catch you if the dream doesn't manifest. Burn the bridges behind you. Close the back door. And stand face to face with your destiny until it yields. Most men fail because they leave themselves a way out. They prepare to retreat instead of preparing to conquer. But the mind that is prepared to retreat will always hesitate in the face of pressure. And hesitation kills potential faster than failure ever will. If you are to think with power, your thoughts must be fully committed. Your vision must not be part-time. Your standards must not be flexible. You must walk like a man who has already become what others doubt. That is not arrogance. That is alignment. And from that alignment, you begin to develop something rare, mental endurance. Mental endurance is the power to remain locked in day after day, week after week, regardless of external validation. It is the capacity to stay obsessed when no one claps, to continue when you're tired, to execute when it feels unfair. Because the impossible is not achieved in a single victory. It is earned through thousands of repetitions that most will never see. It is earned in the shadows. When the rest of the world is asleep, entertained, distracted, you are working. Not just physically, but mentally, religiously. Training your mind to ignore noise, to override fear, to move forward when logic says stop. And this brings us to a higher law, controlled attention. The ability to direct and maintain your focus is the ultimate currency of power in a distracted world. Your environment is designed to scatter your energy. Advertisements, opinions, endless entertainment, all engineered to fracture your will. But the man who learns to control his attention is invincible. Because when your attention is governed, your reality is shaped with precision. What you dwell upon expands. What you obsess over materializes. If you give attention to doubt, you build a prison. If you give attention to fear, you attract more of it. But if you give attention to your vision, your mission, your plan, every cell in your body will begin to organize around its achievement. That is not philosophy, that is law. The law of concentration states, whatever you hold in your mind with energy and repetition must eventually appear in your physical world. So ask yourself, what are you holding in your mind right now? Is it a clear, defined, emotionally charged image of the future you demand? Or is it a collage of worries, what-ifs, and other people's limitations? Be ruthless, because your thinking will create your life whether you do it consciously or by default. And there is no neutral thought. Every idea is a vote for the man you are becoming or the man you are outgrowing. So choose. Choose with conviction. Choose to become so intentional with your mind that your results become predictable. This leads us into the next principle, specialized knowledge. You must understand. General knowledge is everywhere. It is in books, in classrooms, in conversations. But specialized knowledge, applied knowledge, that is what builds empires. The man who achieves the impossible becomes a student of the exact thing he desires to master. He reads not for entertainment, but for evolution. He studies his craft like a surgeon studies anatomy, obsessively, intentionally, with urgency. Because knowledge, when applied with discipline and purpose, becomes power. But knowledge alone, it is nothing. Millions of men know what to do. Few ever do it. So study with focus, but then act immediately, consistently, because action, especially action in the face of fear, is what separates the visionary from the fantasizer. It is what builds momentum, and momentum is the silent engine behind every overnight success you will ever see. It is the reason why the impossible starts to look inevitable, because behind the scenes, the man has been moving every single day without fail, even on the days when no one noticed, especially on those days. Because here's the truth, the universe does not reward intention, it rewards execution. You do not get what you wish for, you get what you prepare for relentlessly. And what are you preparing for? Is it a life that looks like your potential, or one that resembles your excuses? Because thoughts create emotion, emotion fuels behavior, and behavior forms your future. This is why I urge you, guard your thoughts like gold, sharpen them like steel, align them like soldiers before battle. Because once your thinking is right, your life cannot help but follow. But it will not happen passively. The man who thinks to achieve the impossible does not wait to feel ready. He moves before the mood arrives. He acts in the face of uncertainty. He builds certainty through repetition. He understands that his results are not tied to how he feels, but to what he practices. This is the secret. To think with power is to take full ownership over your inputs, your focus, and your narrative. It is to say, I am not a victim, I am a creator, and I will create something that defies limitation. But even then, even with clarity, faith, repetition, knowledge, you will be tested. The impossible does not bow to casual thinkers. It laughs in the face of part-time effort. You will hit walls. You will question yourself. You will wonder if you were foolish for believing. And in that moment, remember this, nothing great is built without resistance. The pressure you feel is proof that you are creating something real. And pressure, properly applied, is what transforms coal into diamond. So keep thinking. Think with clarity. Think with intensity. Think with action. Because when your thinking becomes congruent, when your thoughts, your beliefs, your habits, your identity all align, you become magnetic. You become the kind of man who cannot be ignored. You walk into rooms differently. You command your hours differently. You speak differently because your thoughts are no longer random. They are weapons. You have trained your mind to see what others cannot, to act when others freeze, to believe when others fold. That is what makes you dangerous. Not your background, not your credentials, not your current position, but your thinking. Your thinking is your future. So mold it, master it, obsess over it, because once you do, what once looked impossible will start looking inevitable. And then the world will say, how did he do it? And you will know. You will smile not because it was easy, but because you were prepared. You learned to think. And in learning to think, you learned how to create what they said could never be done. Every man is born with the ability to think, but only a rare few learn how to think with intention, with mastery, with power so focused it bends reality in their favor. And those few, those builders of destiny, become the ones who do what others say is impossible. Because the impossible is never about the world. It is always about you, your beliefs, your standards, your thoughts, rehearsed, refined, and reinforced until they take on a life of their own. The man who achieves the impossible is not superhuman. He has simply reprogrammed his mental machinery to reject anything less than his highest potential. This man understands a final truth. The dominating thought of your mind becomes the dominating condition of your life. So ask yourself again, what dominates your mind? Is it fear or focus? Is it hope or certainty? Is it imagination wedded to action or fantasy disguised as procrastination? Because if you are not programming your mind daily, then it is being programmed for you by culture, by mediocrity, by the low standards of the world around you. And if you think like the masses, you will live like the masses. That is why the impossible stays impossible for most, because they try to fit in, while the man who achieves the impossible chooses to stand apart. You must be willing to think alone, to think in contradiction to what you were taught, to build new beliefs through new behavior. You cannot think at a high level while acting at a low one. So stop trying to have the life you want. Become the man who commands it. The man who invests every hour, every word, every decision into his becoming. He wakes up with direction. He moves with design. He creates with urgency, because he knows that time is not to be managed, it is to be mastered. And to master time, you must master thought. A man who cannot control his thinking will always be a slave to his circumstances. But a man who governs his mind becomes a ruler of worlds. That man, he understands the bridge between thought and reality. He understands that the mind does not obey suggestion once. It obeys repetition with emotion. So he speaks his vision not once, not twice, but until his subconscious accepts it as fact. He rehearses his future in the theater of his imagination until it becomes a blueprint for action. And then he builds it. Not in fantasy, not in theory, but in real time, with real tools, discipline, precision, and persistence. Because the only difference between a wish and a result is execution. And execution is a mental discipline long before it is a physical one. This is what separates achievers from dreamers. Dreamers ask, what if? Achievers ask, what must I become to make it so? And once they identify the man they must become, they become him. Through habit, through repetition, through the relentless conditioning of identity. Because your results will never exceed your self-image. And your self-image is just the echo of your dominant thoughts. So if you want impossible results, you must create an unshakable image of yourself that makes those results inevitable. Not by luck, but by law. The law of consistent identity states, you will always behave in a manner consistent with the person you believe yourself to be. So change the belief, and you change the behavior. Change the behavior, and you change the outcome. And when the outcomes start to compound, the impossible no longer feels like a peak, it becomes your new baseline. But you must protect that identity like a sacred fire. Because the world will try to pull you back. Friends who doubt you, voices that mock you, environments that invite you to go soft again. Ignore them. The new version of you, the one forged in clarity and pressure, does not owe anyone the comfort of who you used to be. Let the old version die. Let the doubtful version fade. Let the version who waited for permission drown in the certainty of your new vision. Because when your mind becomes obsessed with what must be, the how will present itself. Doors will open, allies will appear, resources will emerge, but only when your thinking reaches the level that demands it. Because life does not respond to half decisions. It responds to the man who is all in. And if you are all in, mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, then hear me now. You will become unstoppable. You will walk with such presence, such fire, such faith in your own cause that the world will bend to accommodate you. Not because it favors you, but because it cannot deny you. And at that point, you no longer live in possibility, you are possibility. You are the proof that thought becomes thing. You are the man who learned to think so precisely, so deliberately, so powerfully that impossibility had no space to breathe. You are the man who rewrote his limits through the discipline of mental transformation. And in that rewriting, you have claimed what few ever do. Freedom, the freedom to create, the freedom to dominate your direction, the freedom to live without apology. And that freedom was never found out there. It was born the moment you mastered your mind. So from this day forward, never again say, I can't. Say, what belief must I change to make it so? Never again say, it's too late. Say, it is now urgent. Never again say, maybe one day. Say, today I begin. Because today is all you have. And the future belongs to those who begin not with hope, but with high-level thinking followed by high-level action. Let others stay where they are. You have work to do. You have visions to manifest. You have a mind to sharpen until it becomes your most dangerous weapon. And once your mind is focused, armed with belief, charged with faith, and reinforced with discipline, there is nothing you cannot create. Nothing too far. Nothing too high. Nothing too impossible. Because the man who has learned to think correctly has already done the hardest part. The rest is just construction. So build. Build what others can't see. Build what others said could never exist. Build it quietly. Build it relentlessly. Build it until the only thing people can say is, I didn't think it was possible. And you will say, that's because you never learned to think.